Exodus 13. The Lord said to Moses, "Consecrate to me every firstborn male. The first offspring of every womb among the Israelites belongs to me, whether human or animal." Then Moses said to the people, "Commemorate this day, the day you came out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, because the Lord brought you out of it with a mighty hand. Eat nothing containing yeast. Today, in the month of Aviv, you are leaving. When the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Hivites, and Jebusites, the land he swore to your ancestors to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you are to observe this ceremony in this month. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast, and on the 7th day hold a feast to the Lord. Eat unleavened bread during those 7 days. Nothing with yeast in it is to be seen among you, nor shall any yeast be seen anywhere within your borders. On that day tell your son, 'I do this because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt.' This observance will be for you like a sign on your hand and a reminder on your forehead that this law of the Lord is to be on your lips. For the Lord brought you out of Egypt with his mighty hand. You must keep this ordinance at the appointed time, year after year. After the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites and gives it to you, as he promised on oath to you and your ancestors, you are to give over to the Lord the first offspring of every womb. All the firstborn males of your livestock belong to the Lord. Redeem with a lamb every firstborn donkey, but if you do not redeem it, break its neck. Redeem every firstborn among your sons. In days to come, when your son asks you, 'What does this mean?' say to him, 'With a mighty hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed the firstborn of both people and animals in Egypt. This is why I sacrifice to the Lord the first male offspring of every womb, and redeem each of my firstborn sons. And it will be like a sign on your hand and a symbol on your forehead that the Lord brought us out of Egypt with his mighty hand.' When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road toward the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of Egypt ready for battle. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, because Joseph had made the Israelites swear an oath. He had said, 'God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up with you from this place.' After leaving Succoth, they camped at Etham on the edge of the desert. By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to guide them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people."
Okay, if not, what I'm going to do is to teach you the method I mentioned last week. It's called the SPACER method. It's an acronym to help you remember the method, okay? So, SPACER. Now, when you read the Bible, the first thing you need to do, of course, is you prepare your heart by praying and asking God to lead you and to guide you. Alright, so that's the first step. Separate your heart, find a quiet place, and then a place where nobody will disturb you, so you can focus and concentrate. Read through the whole passage slowly so that you understand it. Even if you're reading in your own native language, it's good to read slowly and then just absorb Now, some of us, God made us very fortunately to love reading. That's people like me. I love reading. I've got lots of books that you would have noticed. But then there's some of us that God made who don't like reading at all. Not because you're less clever, or not because you're less intelligent, or anything like that. No, it's just that God made us differently. Some people, like my brother Matthew here, he's not good with reading. He learns visually, right? And he's of course inaudibly listening, right? You put me in lecture theatre, I go. So reading is good for me. Hearing is not good for me. And maybe partly because my hearing is not so good. Some people have to say, "Excuse me, repeat." Yeah. So I lose track. Some of us learn kinestically. We have to use our hands. You give me a lecture, you give me a talk, I go to sleep. You give me pictures, maybe it helps, but you ask me to do it. Yeah. I suspect Daniel is like that too, right? You do it with your hands. You do a movie, whoa, I do that beautifully, but you ask me to read. So we learn differently. But anyway, whatever it is, if we read slowly, most of us can manage, right? So we read slowly. Now, when you read slowly, you let God speak to you too along the way. Now, as you read through, after you read through one time, you read through a second time. And then as you read through the second time, now ask yourself questions. You have a piece of paper in front of you, you ask questions. It starts with S. What do you think S stands for? When you read through the Bible, what would you want to learn to look out for? You're reading the whole of Scripture, but what are you looking for in Scripture? What is the biggest thing we worry about when we live in this world? Salvation, but before you're saved? Saved. Okay? So, as you read through the passage, ask yourself, is there a sin in this passage that I should avoid? A sin that I should watch out for? So if you're reading a passage and it says, do not do this, do not do that, of course, that would be very clear. Sometimes it may not be so clear. So you read carefully and see whether there's a sin to avoid. The Bible, however, we read it also because there are lots of P's in it. P. What's P? Pepper? when my daughter went to nursery school, every day she goes, when she comes back, we ask her, "Pawan, what did you eat today?" Because nursery school they have lunch before they come home. She would say rice and peas. Every day the same answer, rice and peas. This P here is not pepper, it's not P-E-A-P. It is. The Bible has a lot of it. It's from God.
Promise.
Promise. So you look and see, is there a promise here to claim? Is there a promise here to claim? Are there many promises to claim? Some passages are just full of promise. Okay, so are there promises to claim? A, the action. Is there an action that I should take after reading this passage? Jesus was telling the story of the Good Samaritan, and he says, there was a priest, and there was a Levite, and there was a Samaritan, and they all three saw an injured man. The priest walked by without helping, the Levite walked by without helping. They're supposed to be religious people. They give all kinds of excuses. We are holy, we cannot touch dead people, because they thought this injured man was so injured, they thought he was dead, and holy people cannot touch dead people, so they walked away. And they were the ones you would expect to help first. And the Samaritan came along, and the Samaritan, to the Jews, Samaritans are dirty people. You look down on them, they are worth nothing, and they are hopeless and they're useless. And the Samaritan was the one who stopped and helped the injured person. And Jesus says, effectively who is the good man. That's why we call him the Good Samaritan, the story. Who's the good man here? This is a Samaritan that everybody despises and makes fun of. But in any case, Jesus says, go and do likewise. Go and do the same, like the Samaritan, not like the priest or the Levite. So here is an action to take. Go and be a good neighbor to those you meet, even if they look like people who are dead or who don't need your help. Go take a look anyway, right? So there's an action to take, and you can say, Lord God, thank you for showing me this story. Help me to take an action today that will help somebody. So there's an action to take. C, there's lots of this in the Bible too.
Confess.
Confess? No. Confess is what we do after we read. But what is there in the Bible? What's
Conviction.
conviction is what we feel after we read it.
Consecration. Christ.
Commitment. A lot of C's, but you're all at C.
Christ.
Christ. There's a lot of Christ in it, yeah. But covenant, yeah, there's a commandment. Commercial. Okay, a command. Is there a command I must obey? As I read this, is there a command I must obey? E. Example to follow. Yeah. Is there an example to follow? Yes. This Good Samaritan is an example I should follow. Lord, help me to follow this example. Okay? The example could be Jesus himself. It could be somebody else. And finally, after you've gone through all that and you haven't got, sometimes you may not get any of this in the particular passage. It's okay. It is called revelation. Okay, don't confuse it with the book of Revelations, which is the last book in the Bible. Okay, a revelation is a teaching, something that God has revealed to you. So as you read it, it cannot be for nothing. There is something in this passage that God is speaking to you about. God is revealing to you. Today, do not harden your heart. So as you read, today do not harden your heart. Yes, God, how do you know my heart is hardening? Yeah, God is speaking to you. Yeah, it's none of the above. It's something that God revealed to you. And yeah, it could be something that God has revealed to you about Christ. As you read it, there's a revelation of Christ, about God himself maybe, about humankind in general, or maybe yourself in particular. It could be a revelation about the world we live in. Some teaching that you never realized, yeah? Some kind of wisdom or teaching, perhaps, that you should. As you read the book of Proverbs, for example, there are many ways, many things in there that tells you how we should live our lives. And you could perhaps look at the teaching, and there may be something on the church, how the church should behave, or how the church should be like, and a life in general, yeah? Much teaching on life in general, how we should live life, and perhaps anything else, etc. As we read the Bible, don't discount the fact that sometimes God may speak directly to us through that passage we're reading. To give you an example now, when I was doing my master's in Boston, and I had been given a scholarship to do the master's, but not to end there. I was given a scholarship to carry on to do the PhD. I was really scared. I was telling myself, there's no way I can finish a PhD. There's no way my brains are good enough for a PhD. It's only a 286 inside here. 286. Oh, I can reduce from 486. Okay, 486. And I could not. I could not see myself finishing the program. So I prayed, Lord, please let me go home. Especially because I was being employed by the university and they actually told me as a lawyer, a professional, I don't really need a PhD to teach. My master's would be enough. So I was praying to go home. Partly, I guess, is I didn't want to be embarrassed, right? You go do a PhD and you go home. What did you do? I did a PhD program. Did you get it? No. Not yet. So maybe because of that. But I said, God, don't let me go through that. But nonetheless, your will be done, right? I was willing to do God's will. So there in my confusion, I still say, okay, I have to apply for a place. I applied for the university. I got a program. I got a supervisor. Everything was done. But I was in America and I had to fly to London to do my PhD. So I was reading the book of Joshua. And Joshua is after Exodus, it's after Numbers, Deuteronomy, all that. It's the sixth book in the Bible. And Joshua chapter 3, sorry. And I was reading Joshua chapter 3. And this is part of my regular Bible reading. It wasn't something some people do that. They open, God, please speak to me today. Okay, don't do that. There was a guy who says, God, today I want you to speak to me. Please, I will open the Bible and speak to me from the passage I point. Okay, so he opened, he read, and Judas hanged himself. No, he cannot be there.
Something good wrong here.
So he closed it and opened again. God, please be serious, okay? This time, open it. Be serious. Talk. Go and do likewise. No, they cannot be. God, one more time. Whatever you was going to do it quickly. Okay, that's not how you read the Bible, okay? The Bible is not a lottery ticket and yeah. Anyway, so I was reading my regular reading and I came to Joshua chapter 3 and I read, this is Moses is leading the people out of Egypt, right? Exodus, we're reading about it. And then they left and Moses died. And after Moses died, Joshua took over. And Joshua is a young man and he's trying to convince the people of Israel, follow me. You followed Moses, now you follow me. And they were, of course, not very sure that they should follow Joshua. And of course, God spoke to Joshua, be strong and courageous, do not be afraid, I am with you. So, as I was reading this, I came to verse 5. Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, means make yourself holy, set aside yourself for God. Verse 5, Joshua told the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. So here I am. Tomorrow my air ticket to fly out from Boston to London says go to the aeroplane down at this Logan Airport and take this plane and fly across. So I was going to cross. Well, Joshua is about to cross a river, the River Jordan. God knew I was going to cross some water. This is a slightly bigger river, the Atlantic Ocean. And he says, consecrate yourselves, cross. I will do amazing things. And surely I hope it was a PhD amongst them, but I wasn't very sure what it was. But God said cross, and I crossed. And I did get my PhD, so that was one of the amazing things I never could believe. And the other amazing thing is it was in the plural. For a long time, I didn't realize what the other thing was. But of course, I should. My daughter was born in England. 1 month after we landed, she was conceived. And we had waited 5 years for her. So, amazing things happened because God promised. He first promised Joshua, so he wouldn't have thought he was speaking to me, but God knew the situation I was in at that moment. Frightened, confused, about to cross a very big body of water, and he says, go do it. Joshua did it before. You can do it. I'm with you. And so, sometimes God can speak to us like that. Now, one of the things we recommend is when you read the Bible, they have a little exercise book or notebook beside you. You do a journal, write down what God spoke to you on that day. Put a date and put down on this day, on the eve of my crossing the Atlantic, God told Joshua and God told me, cross. Consecrate yourself. So it could be a revelation about yourself too. Okay, one of these things. Okay, so let's start with S. Is there a sin to avoid in this passage?
Yes.
Anyone? I hear some yes.
Which was verse 15.
15. Okay, what does verse 15 say?
When Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed every firstborn in Egypt, both man and animal. This is why I sacrifice to the Lord the first male offspring of every womb and redeem each of my firstborn sons.
Okay, so when Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go. Okay, so what's the sin there? Not letting people go? Why should he let people go? So why is that a sin?
Sin of disobedience.
Sin of disobedience. God, actually it was God who said let the people go, right? So Pharaoh refused to listen to God, so there's a sin. Refusing to listen to God, refusing to obey God. And there's something in what Jeffrey says too. He was keeping them as slaves, and no human being should keep another human as slaves. So letting them go was what he should do, but he committed the sin of enslaving another human being. Yeah. So you can see that in verse 15, you've got two sins, maybe two examples to avoid. Examples to follow and examples to avoid. So example to avoid here could well be not to disobey God and not to enslave another person, because God will make sure that you suffer the consequence of the sin, right, as Pharaoh discovered. Any other sin?
It's not explicit. It's,
Yes,
it's implied by the passage, but because what God commanded them to do, or the Egyptians did not. Like, consecrate your firstborn.
Consecrate your firstborn. Okay. So there is the word consecrate. It means to make holy. In the Bible, we see that God is holy, He's good, and human beings are no good. So God keeps telling human beings, us, His people, to be holy. And as I mentioned, actually, to be holy sometimes means just simply being different from the world around you, to be set apart for God's use. So God says in this passage, consecrate your firstborn. Dedicate your firstborn. Okay, that's another meaning to that. Dedicate your firstborn to God's use. So the Jews were taught that their firstborn belonged to God. And sometimes Chinese Christians try to do that. But it's very hard for a Chinese family to consecrate the most valuable, for any family in fact, to consecrate, to give to God their first son. In the Chinese culture, the first son is very important. He carries on the family tradition, the family name, that inherits the father's wealth and the father's reputation and so on. So he's a very important son. And when the father dies, he's the one who leads the funeral and worship and so on. So it's very hard for the Chinese father to consecrate or to dedicate his son to God. So Chinese fathers will pray for 6 sons. The first son, he says, will go and be a doctor. So that anybody who's sick will get cured, right? So first son, very important, doctor. Second son, accountant. Accountant, you need to count money. Yeah, accountant. So you need accountant, second son. The third son will be a lawyer. Yeah, because he can protect all his brothers and sue anybody else. And know all the laws to avoid, yeah? The fourth son will be an architect, because after they make all the money, they have a big house. They need to build a big house. So the fourth son is an architect. The fifth son has to be a businessman. and make a lot of money and so on. So banker or a businessman or so 5 sons. Then the 6th son, he says, now you be a priest. And pray for your brother's sins. So only the 6th son is dedicated to God. And God says, no. First son. First son. Okay? So that's what they do. And so Matt is saying, therefore the whole passage implies, okay, the word implies, that means indirectly tells us what?
The whole passage implies that Egypt sins, not doing every single thing that this passage is telling the Israelites to do.
Right. So Egypt did not consecrate its first son. The Pharaoh of Egypt, in fact, believes that he is God. And when he dies, his son will become the next God. So that he is already God. Why do you need to dedicate him to God? Yeah. So there is this implied, that means indirectly, there is this sin of disobeying God, or maybe even being self-centered rather than God-centered. That we are gods ourselves, so why do we need God? Okay, rebellion, you might say. So implied means indirectly. There is this, from this whole passage, we see the inference. Another way of saying, we infer, we take the next step of logic. Okay, we read this and say, okay, so if you get punished, that means the next step of logic is you should not do what God was punishing. Alright, any other sin?
There's symbolic sin.
Sure, what is the symbolic
Verse
sin?
7, no east.
Okay, verse 7. Yeah, you can, if you want to read carefully and slowly and you read deeper, you can see that, yes, actually now Chris is doing something called a cross-reference to the New Testament. And there are many passages in the New Testament where Jesus and his disciples refer to leaven as sin. And I explained to you last week, leaven is fermented barley. You see, today some Bible translations translate the word leaven as yeast. Yeast is the stuff that you put into bread dough to make it rise, so that it becomes bread with all the air holes in it, the air bubbles in it. So yeast makes the dough rise. Okay, dough. Now, when you have, in the old days, they were not as sophisticated as we are. To get yeast, which is a fungus, is flying around all the air. So they take the barley that they have and they let it ferment. Actually it goes rotten, right? Fermenting is a process of letting it go rotten. To go sour, yes. So Chinese we use soya bean, Japanese, Chinese, soya bean, natto, yeah? Chou tofu, yeah. We let the soya bean go rotten, then it's smelly, that's called fermenting. So when the barley is fermented, it's being left there for a while. Actually the fungus that flies in there will drop into it, so it becomes a kind of yeast. So the fermented leaven is yeast. And because it is smelly, it is alcoholic, it is sour and all that, it comes to represent corruption. The yeast was pure and nice, and now it's corrupted. So leaven corrupts us, sin corrupts us. Okay? So when you think about that indirectly, as Chris does, you know, he's now relating the New Testament and Old Testament together. He says, okay, so the festival of unleavened bread signifies that we should keep our lives free of sin. Yeah, and so it's like you said, it's symbolic or inference. It's an inference, indirect learning.